A young man stands at the edge of the wilderness, the heat radiating off the cracked, red rock, a dry accounting method to keep the royal chronology straight. But if you look closer at the census taken in the desert, at the military casualties, there are gaps in the line, empty spaces where friends stood that morning. The commander takes the census of the living. He tallies the cost of the kingdom. He looks for his brother, Asahel. Asahel lies dead with a spear driven completely through his stomach, but he is not the only one. 2 Samuel chapter 2. Verse 30 records the exact head count. Joab gathered all the people together. There lacked of David's servants 19 men, 19 nameless soldiers, plus Asahel, making 20. 20 bodies left in the blood-soaked dirt. Same number, same threshold. The casualty report is not a random battlefield statistic. It is a theological echo. In the wilderness, 20 was the age the spear was placed in your hand. Here, 20 is the exact number of spears dropped in the dust. 19 men represent the limit of the collective loss. 20 is the moment the grief pierces the commander's own family. These 19 men paid the brutal price of transition. They bled out in the brush so David could secure the throne. Their names are stripped away. Their identities are lost to history. But the number remains forever. The text immortalizes the boundary. 19 is the number of transition. It is the exact threshold where an old era bleeds out. At the smoke rising from the temple in Jerusalem, you start to see a system. You realize the ancient authors are weaving a mathematical thread through the text. It is the precise moment a new kingdom begins to rise. But the weight of this boundary does not remain trapped in ancient history. It reaches past the battlefields of Israel. It crosses the centuries. It steps quietly into the rooms where we live today. You sit in the front seat of a parked car. The engine turned off, listening to the heavy rain hit the glass of the windshield. The pale yellow glow of a street lamp illuminates your hands resting on the steering wheel. And you feel a sudden, suffocating weight settling into your chest. You are realizing that the choice you are about to make cannot be blamed on your parents, your upbringing, or the unfairness of your circumstances. You realize the safety net is gone. You have crossed a phantom threshold. For a long time, you lived under a canopy of inherited grace. When you failed, it was because you were still learning, still growing, still a product of the broken environment you were placed inside. Your mistakes were cushioned by the assumption of innocence, subsidized by the people who covered your deficits when you fell short. You were the 19-year-old in the desert, wandering through a mess that someone else created, immune to the ultimate judgment, because society had not yet placed the spear in your hands. But that covering does not last forever. The question is not why this number keeps appearing. It is what this number is trying to uncover inside of you. Eventually, the calendar aligns, the tension snaps, and the universe demands a reckoning. You reach the spiritual age of 20. The spear is handed to you, and the battle becomes entirely your own. There is no one left to blame for the bitterness you are harboring. There is no one left to fault for the fracture in your home or the deep isolation in your mind. The grace of your youth has expired, and the absolute reality of your autonomy has arrived. Accountability is not a biological age. It is the terrifying moment the covering is pulled away. Galah. The Babylonian fire does not just happen to ancient cities, constructed of heavy stone and carved cedar beams. It happens in the quiet moments of an ordinary Tuesday, when the excuses you have built in your life around finally burn down to white ash. You are left standing entirely exposed, holding the weight of your own rebellion in your bare hands. We assume the removal of our excuses is a punishment designed to humiliate us. We think the fire is meant to leave us completely abandoned in the wasteland. But the biblical pattern reveals something deeply counterintuitive about the nature of divine discipline. God does not strip away your covering to destroy you. He removes it because you cannot walk into a land of promise while clinging to the illusions of your childhood. We are a species obsessed with the concept of innocence. We want to know exactly when we cross the line from being a victim of our circumstances You have to be uncovered before you can be rebuilt. And the ancient prophets knew exactly how hot that fire of rebuilding had to be. A scribe unrolls a thick leather parchment. A king sits on his throne in the winter house. A charcoal fire burns fiercely in a bronze brazier. The air in the room is thick with tension. The words of the prophet Jeremiah are read aloud. They are words of absolute warning. They are words of impending disaster. King Jehoiakim listens to the judgment. He does not tremble. He does not drop to his knees. He does not tear his expensive royal robes. He calmly reaches for a small, sharp iron knife. He slices the scroll into sections. He drops the pieces into the open flames. He watches the leather curl in the heat. He smells the sharp scent of burning ink. He thinks he can burn the consequence. He thinks he can sever the boundary. But the clock of heaven does not stop. The lunar calendar keeps moving. The tension between human rebellion and divine order stretches to the breaking point. Then, the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar arrives. The Babylonian war machine breaches the heavy limestone walls. Soldiers carry blazing torches through the narrow streets. They smash the massive bronze pillars of the temple. They swing axes into the carved cedar walls. They set fire to the holy place. The golden altars melt into pools on the stone floor, to being the architect of our own ruin. We want a clear, measurable boundary. We ask, when does childhood end and consequence begin? Thick, choking smoke blocks out the Middle Eastern sun. The heat radiates through the panic of the city. The flames consume the sanctuary. The flames consume the royal palaces. The flames consume every house of consequence. The first fire was contained in a small bronze bowl. The final fire swallows the entire horizon. This destruction is not a random historical tragedy. It is the terrifying arrival of accountability. For 19 years, the sun and the moon drifted out of alignment. For 19 years, the prophets stood in the streets and screamed. For 19 years, the warning hung over the city like a suspended blade. But the threshold is finally crossed. The covering is entirely removed. The grace period expires. Galah. The people are dragged out of their hiding places. They are marched into the brutal Babylonian wind. Jeremiah sits alone in the smoking rubble. He watches the white ash fall like snow over the broken stones. He remembers the small scroll burning in the quiet winter house. He sees the massive temple burning in the violent summer heat. The line of mercy has been shattered. The era of innocence has officially ended. The 19 soldiers are dead in the dirt of Gibeon. The 19 years of patience have burned to the ground in Jerusalem. But the biblical authors do not leave us. The ancient text offers an answer, but it is not the answer most modern readers expect. 19 is not merely a chronological footnote, sitting in the ashes forever, because what happens after the fire changes how you see the entire story. A 19-year-old stands in the wilderness, and a generation is spared from the dust. 19 years turn in the night sky, and the drifting moon aligns perfectly with the sun. 19 soldiers fall in the mud of Gibeon, and a broken kingdom transitions to a throne. A scroll is sliced apart in a quiet room, and the judgment of a nation ignites in the streets. A Babylonian king reaches his 19th year, and the heavy stone walls of the temple collapse into fire. A Hebrew word strips away the religious covering, and a rebellious people are left exposed to the wind. A phantom threshold of innocence is crossed, and the heavy spear of accountability is placed in your hands. One boundary, one story. But here is the part I keep coming back to. The 19-year-old waking up in his canvas tent on the edge of the scorching Sinai desert. He must have listened to the weeping of his older brother, the 20-year-old who realized his life would end in the dry sand. He must have looked at his own hands and realized how close he came to the invisible line of death. He did not survive because he was righteous. He survived because God established a boundary of mercy. It is the razor-thin boundary between inherited grace and absolute personal accountability. To feel the weight of this boundary, you cannot sit in a modern living room. If you are in a season where the covering has just been pulled back, where the grace of your youth has expired, and you are standing naked in the wind of your own consequences, do not run back to the ashes of your old excuses. Galah feels like a destruction, but it is an invitation. You cannot walk into a promised future while clinging to the illusions of your childhood. The fire has to burn, the cedar beams of your self-righteousness, so you can finally stand in the absolute truth of who you are. If this reached something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who is walking through their own terrifying season of transition. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. And may the God who forces the wandering moon back into perfect alignment with the sun pull the fragmented pieces of your own life together and walk with you across the threshold into whatever he is building next. You have to step into the choking dust of the Sinai Peninsula. You have to stand in the middle of a terrified camp that has just actively rebelled against the God who rescued them from slavery. You have to hear the decree that will echo through the rest of the biblical narrative. Because what happens at the threshold of 19 changes how you read every judgment, every exile. The wind carries the smell of sweat and panic from 3 million people camped behind him. He is exactly 19 years old, and every act of mercy in the pages that follow. It all starts with a generation that refuses to move forward. 10 men walk out of the valley of Eshcol, carrying a single cluster of grapes so massive, it takes 2 of them to bear it on a wooden pole. They bring fruit. They also bring terror. The cities are walled up to the sky. The inhabitants are giants. The spies say they felt like grasshoppers walking among them. The report spreads like a virus. The camp fractures. 3 million people tear their clothes. They weep through the quiet desert night. They pick up stones from the sand to hurl at Moses. They want to appoint a new captain. They want to march back to the brick-making pits of Egypt. And then the glory of the Lord flashes like lightning over the tabernacle. A decree is spoken. A boundary is established. Numbers chapter 14. Verse 29 records the verdict. Your dead bodies shall fall in this wilderness. And of all your number, listed in the census from 20 years old and upward, who have grumbled against me. 20 years old and upward. Think about the terrifying precision of that math. His older brother, standing right next to him, just turned 20. They share the same canvas tent. They ate the same sweet manna off the damp morning grass. It means the 19-year-old lives. This is not a biological accident. It is a theological architecture. In the ancient Hebrew mind, 20 is the age you are drafted to hold a spear in battle. 20 is the age you hand over the silver half-shekel temple tax. 20 is the moment society recognizes your autonomy. 20 is when your rebellion is fully your own, which means 19 is the absolute limit of covered innocence. At 19, you are still under the spiritual jurisdiction of your father's tent. You are spared the ultimate consequence, not because your faith was stronger, but because your accountability was not yet complete. The 19-year-old stood in the exact same terrified crowd. They felt the exact same panic. They screamed the exact same curses at Moses under the burning sun, but the judgment does not touch them. The 20-year-old will spend the next 4 decades marching in circles, until their bones bleach in the arid wasteland. The 19-year-old will eventually wash their feet in the Jordan River, and walk into a land flowing with milk and honey. 19 is the highest possible age of mercy. They watch the same sea violently split in half. They are only a year apart in age. It is the final year you can participate in a national failure and still survive. We tend to look for grace in the spectacular. A sea tearing open, a rock bursting with fresh water, fire descending on a granite mountain. Grace is all of those things. But grace is also a 19-year-old boy waking up in his tent, realizing he just missed the threshold of death by a handful of months. The number 19 is not an arbitrary cutoff point. It is the final breath of childhood before the weight of consequence crashes down. The Hebrews learned this in the desert, but they would soon realize this number governs far more than the census. It governs the sky above their heads, and it foreshadows the darkest moments of their future. A priest stands on the highest point of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, shivering in the cool night air. His eyes scan the pitch-black horizon, waiting for a single, fragile detail. He is searching for the thinnest silver sliver of the new moon. The moment he sees it, He raises a twisted ram's horn to his lips and blows a sound that echoes across the stone courtyards. The blast of the shofar declares the start of a new month. But this lunar observation creates an immediate mathematical crisis. But they are about to be separated by an invisible cosmic line. The 20-year-old is sentenced to wander the scorching desert until his bones literally turn to dust. A calendar built exclusively on the moon is roughly 11 days shorter than the solar year, which dictates the seasons. If the priests do nothing, the seasons will violently drift backwards. Within a decade, the spring festival of Passover, demanding the offering of early green barley, will slide into the freezing rains of winter. The people would arrive in Jerusalem to offer the first fruits of the harvest, but the ground would still be frozen solid. They must reconcile the fluctuating moon with the unyielding sun to fix the drift. The ancient calendar makers intercalate a leap month, weaving an extra block of time into the fabric of the year. But the pattern of when to add this time is not arbitrary. It requires observing the sky until the lunar phases, and the solar equinoxes arrive back at the exact starting point simultaneously. That perfect cosmic realignment takes exactly 19 years. 235 lunar months match 19 solar years with astonishing, terrifying perfection. The ancient Greeks would later call this the Metonic cycle, but the mechanism was woven deeply into the fabric of Hebrew timekeeping, long before Greek astronomers gave it a name. For 19 years, the sun and the moon seem slightly out of step, pulling away from one another. Drifting through the days, the 19-year-old will walk freely into the land of promise. A city's massive cedar doors burn into white ash in a Babylonian king's 19th year of reign. The intercalary months are inserted, adjusting the clock, forcing the seasons to hold their shape. Then, at the 19th year, the tension resolves, and everything aligns in the dark. In the biblical imagination, the sun rules the day as a symbol of fixed, divine order, while the moon rules the night as a symbol of human frailty, constantly waxing and waning in the shadows, left to themselves. The calendars are in tension. The divine standard and the human reality are constantly drifting apart. 19 is not a random astronomical coincidence. It is the mathematical bridge between human wandering and divine order. It is the precise threshold where the temporal drift is forgiven, where the cycle resets, and the calendar begins again, in perfect harmony. 19 years hold the system together before the discrepancy fractures the seasons entirely. It is the boundary line of alignment. But this principle of 19 years, this exact threshold of reckoning, does not stay trapped in the sky. It eventually descends from the stars and lands violently on the streets of Jerusalem. Open the scroll of Jeremiah. Chapter 52. The text documents the absolute annihilation of Jerusalem. It records the breaking of the stone walls. 19 soldiers vanish into the blood-soaked dirt of a brutal civil war. 19 years perfectly synchronize the ancient Hebrew lunar calendar with the solar cycle. It catalogs the plundering of the massive bronze pillars. It notes the exact moment the intricately carved cedar beams of Solomon's temple collapse into a torrent of white-hot fire. And the author pins this apocalypse to a singular, specific moment in time. In the 19th year of Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, the house of the Lord was burned. The 19th year, the threshold is reached. The alignment of time is complete. The boundary of mercy is crossed. At 19, in the wilderness, the young man was spared the wandering. At 19 in the timeline of Babylon, the nation is dragged out of their homes. The narrative tells us that Judah is taken into exile. But the language underneath that English translation holds a devastating secret. The word your Bible translates as exile is the Hebrew Galah. It is a verb. It appears over 100 times in the ancient texts. But its primary meaning is not geographical. It does not mean to travel. It does not mean to march. Galah means to uncover, to lay entirely bare, to strip away the covering. It is the exact same word used in the book of Ruth, when a desperate Moabite widow uncovers the feet of Boaz on the cold threshing floor. It is the same word used in 1 Samuel when God literally uncovers the ear of a prophet to speak a quiet truth in the dark, forcing the sun and the moon to align exactly where they started in the dark. Same number. Again and again. That root changes everything about how you read the destruction of Jerusalem. Exile is not a relocation. It is an exposure. If seeing the biblical text shift from a dry history lesson into a mirror for the human soul is stirring up something inside of you, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the smoke rises over the city, and the people are finally uncovered. The Babylonians thought they were just deporting slaves, but God was doing something far more profound. He is not just moving a rebellious population from one zip code to another. He is tearing down the walls they hid behind. He is shattering the temple they used as a religious shield. He is burning the golden altars that masked their corrupt hearts. He strips it all away. He leaves them standing naked in the Babylonian wind. Galah. 19 is the year the covering is pulled back. 19 is the year the religious excuses burn to ash. 19 is the year the soul is laid completely bare before the eyes of heaven. But this number does not only govern the sweeping collapse of an entire nation. The next 19 will govern the quiet, bloody details of a single battlefield. Most people read right past it. They assume numbers in the biblical texts are just clerical details. A historian's footnote. Dust settles over the pool of Gibeon. The clash of bronze stops echoing. Joab stands breathless in the fading light. He wipes sweat and blood from his jaw. He looks across a field of broken bodies. This is civil war. Tribe fighting tribe. The house of David clashing against the house of Saul. The swords are heavy. The leather armor is suffocating. The ground around the pool turns to thick, red mud. Abner and his men retreat into the wilderness. Joab and his soldiers chase them through the heat of the day. The adrenaline burns through their veins. They fight until the sun drops behind the limestone hills. Abner stands on top of a hill. He shouts down to Joab, "Shall the sword devour forever?" Joab hears the voice of his enemy. He realizes the slaughter has gone far enough. He raises the ram's horn to his lips. The blast cuts through the screams of the wounded. The men halt. The pursuit ends. The surviving soldiers assemble. They breathe in the cool evening air. They walk back through the battlefield. They check the faces of the fallen. They turn over the bodies in the moonlight. They look around the circle of survivors.